Hey friends, welcome to the channel. I'm Cindy Daychuck with Queen Bee Creations, and I'm happy that you're here with me today. If you've already subscribed to the channel, thank you so much. If you haven't, then I invite you to go ahead and do that. We come at you twice a week with different crafts and furniture refinishing and projects for you to do. Today, so it's a fun one. You know what? I got into the shop the new Fruitful Harvest stamps from IOD, and they are just beautiful. So it's a 2-stamp set with pumpkins and oak leaves and acorns and apples and vines, and it's just lovely. So what I thought that I would do, getting in the spirit of this being the Canadian Thanksgiving weekend, is to use them to actually paint a picture. So I'm not great at painting, and this is where the stamps come in because they're awesome. So what I did was I've got this old picture. This is just kind of a print on a board, and I took the glass out and put it back. And what we're going to do is just lay our base foundation for this first. And to do that, I'm just gonna paint it all. And I'm using all colors from the DIY family of products. So I'm starting with beadboard, and I'm going to paint all of the frame, the outside frame, and towards some of the center in white. So I'm creating, in essence, a background for my painting. And because I'm not putting the glass in this, my painting is going to be able to kind of extend out and include the frame. So I expect that I'm gonna need 2 coats of paint on my frame. So before we start blending some colors for the background, I'm going to get 2 coats of white on this and kind of make sure that I've got at least solid coverage over that gold. So this first coat of white is simply going to be the base coat, and then I'm going to come back at you after that for us to be able to paint the background together, because really, I'm just painting white right now. Not that exciting. I'll see you when I move on to the other colors in the next coat. I have 2 rough coats of white on this, and what I want to do right now before I do any of my stamping or anything else is I want to create a bit of a background. I want to have this have a little bit more color to it without being too dark. So I just want to roughly apply a bit more white around the edging, because the frame is predominantly going to be white, but I may end up blending some other colors up in there. So I just want to get a little bit of that wet paint on, and then we're going to start blending. Now the colors that I have out here, kind of ready and waiting, is a little bit of cake batter. That's the lovely kind of yellowy, buttery, creamy, yellowy color. I have some DIY Summer Crush, which is that orangey, kind of burnt orange color. I have Marquee, yeah, I was just checking to see if that was the red I was using. So Marquee Red. I have a little bit of Bohemian Blue, because I'm thinking I might want a little bit of some of those darker tones hitting there. And I have some Farm Fresh, but my Farm Fresh was kind of solid, so I've added some water to it. So if I need it, I'll dip, not pour, because it'll go everywhere. All right. I also have a spray bottle, of course, to be able to help me with blending some of these colors. So what I'm looking at doing is just roughly creating a bit of a background. And I've got a couple of brushes to be able to get some color on here, and I'm thinking I'm liking the idea of some of that yellow hanging out there. as some of my background. And for this, I'm looking at going up onto my frame a little bit as well. And that was more orange than I think I wanted. So we'll see how that blends in. So I'm just looking at getting a little bit of color on, and you can see I'm not even bothering to change out my brush here at all, because I'm just going to mist it all. Okay, stop misting. Stop misting. And I'm going to go back with that brush that I had the white on, and I'm just going to look now at kind of roughly starting to blend some of those colors together. You can see that red was quite strong. So when I need to, or when I decide that I want to, I'm just going to pop in, get a little bit more of my white. And this is kind of like, think of this like, you know, if you had a picture of maybe an apple orchard, or, you know, a pumpkin orchard, or sunflower farm, or something like that, and you were standing in front of them, but you blurred out the background, right? That you kind of blurred it away. You've got all those colors in the background, but they're blurred. That's kind of what I'm after for my background here. I don't want it to be so dark that my front images, my front stampings, when I get to that part, aren't really going to show. And again, I don't mind some of the colors coming over onto my frame. That's part of the beauty of doing this up as kind of one solid look, that the frame is painted and the image is painted, is that we can use some of the frame as a bit of our canvas as well. So I'm kind of liking that a little bit more. I think a little bit more white up here. All right, I'm not looking to overdo it. Okay, I am okay with that. So I am going to let this dry before we move on to the next step, which is our stamping, because I want to have a nice dry surface so that none of my ink bleeds when I do the stamping. So I'm going to let this dry and come back at you when that's happened. My base is dry, and now it's time to do the stamping. The Fruitful Harvest stamp has tons of different design elements, from pumpkins to apples to oak leaves and acorns and all kinds of things. Now, for the picture, I want to use a number of them. So what I find helpful is to lay it out, see what's going to fit, see which elements I want to use. And because they're going to overlap, I have to do some thinking about how to use the masks. Now, this is a stamp that definitely comes with the masks. They come on, you know, 2 sheets. What's awesome about this is that they've made them a different color. So I've already popped them out, right? But you can see where this is going to be here, and you pop them out and keep one of the clear bags that they're in to be able to keep them stored. And I label the bags with what the particular stamp is, so I know which masks to look for. How this works is, with my design elements, I have to look at which ones I want to be in the foreground, which ones are in the background. So meaning, Here I have this little curlicue, right, and leaf. I want it to be sitting in front of my pumpkin, so it's kind of coming down the front. That means I'm going to have to stamp it first so that it shows up, and that when I stamp, you know, if I didn't use a mask, then when I stamp the pumpkin, it's going to lay over top of this and muddy it up. So what I do have is the little mask of this, so that once I've stamped it, I can take my mask, and it would be the other way around, and cover it up so that when I stamp with the pumpkin over top, it's not going to muddy it. This is going to protect this image. It takes a little bit of thought, right? That as I'm looking at this, I have to be thinking not just where I want them to lay, but which one I want to be seen first. So here, I've got this little pumpkin down. I'm gonna want it behind the big pumpkin, so the big pumpkin could go down first, and then I mask it and I can stamp that. But I am gonna want these two leaves to be behind the little pumpkin, so they get stamped after the little pumpkin, and they're overlapped, so I'm gonna have to mask one of those leaves. So it gets a little bit crazy, but we're able to do this in stages because I just have to think about what do I want in the front. And the two elements I want definitely right now in the front is this little leaf design and this little apple. Okay, because this is gonna lay over top. So I want the apple sitting in the front. I want this sitting in the front for my first layer. So everything else I can move aside a little bit. And I just am going to be stamping those two little elements. It starts getting easier as we go, I swear, guys. But, all right, I just had my stamp pad. So let's do our little apple. So I have my black ink stamp pad. I'm going to lay my apple out. I'm running out of space here. Let me get my paints out of the way so I don't inadvertently end up painting anything. Now, I wanted this in around here. So I want my apple coming right in about there. I'm going to lay it down. Always keep one hand on it, holding it in place as you move your fingers around, just to make sure that you're pressing that image down in and that you're not shifting it inadvertently. Okay, I'm using that once and once only, so I'm going to put that off to the side, ready to go get washed. And the last one that I wanted to do before I do anything else is this little curlicue. So let me just kind of use one of my other stamps here just to kind of mark roughly where it's going. Whoops. Okay, that got a little too much ink on that one end, so I'm just taking that off a bit so it doesn't blob too much on my and I only need one of those. Okay, perfect. Now I want to stamp, so if you can see those two, I want to stamp my big pumpkin. And when I stamp this pumpkin, it's going to lay over top of both of those. So what I need to do is take my two masks, so my little apple mask, and lay that right over top of my apple so that it's laying over the surface of that just perfectly. And then I need to do the same for this little leaf design. And it's just so that when I stamp over top, I'm protecting those two images. Right? So let's try and get all of our ink onto this big Mamma Jamma pumpkin. Which has just awesome details all over it. Okay, and now I want to lay that down right about there. Perfect. Now, you see how it's gone over top of my apple, but my apple image is sitting in the front because the rest of the ink went over top of my apple. And the same thing, let me get this off, for my little leaf. So you can see how my little leaf and my apple are sitting in the front. Cool, right? Masks are the most beautiful, amazing thing. So I know that I've got a lot of design elements that are going to overlap that. And I know that I've got some for the apple again. So I'm going to stick my apple back down to protect it, because I had wanted to put some of this design over it, but it's going to be in behind both those images. So I needed both of them masked off so that this big viney leaf goes behind. And you could have had this going behind the apple, but over in front of the pumpkin. I mean, the masks give you so many options of things. They're awesome. Just try and get this so that it doesn't do weird things. Yay. All right. So the other side, I have my little pumpkin that I want to be in behind my big pumpkin. So I'm leaving the big pumpkin mask there. And I'll stamp my pumpkin next. And now I need to mask that pumpkin. So I'm going to cover it with my plastic because I have my two leaves and I want the leaves to be coming out from behind that pumpkin. Now, I'm going to do this one first. So we'll be kind of stamping a bunch of it over top of that masked pumpkin. So it's coming up over here. And we're going to now leave that pumpkin mask on. And now I'm going to mask that leaf because I have another leaf and it's going to be behind both of them. All right, so we get some ink on. And this is the last element, I think. So let me just get that on and then I can show you. All right, so let me turn this around for you. So you can see we take this mask off and these two masks off, and you can see how things just kind of laid out in behind each other so that when we overlap we don't get all of that kind of muddying of it. So what I'm going to do is I just want this ink to dry and I want to go get all of my different little elements all washed off. You don't want to leave the ink on forever onto your stamp. So you want to get that all cleaned off so that it doesn't start to clog them up. I'm a little bit messy too. And then we're going to come back and we're going to do some painting. Now that the pumpkin is dry, what I am looking at doing is taking just a little fine art brush and some of those DIY colors. So in particular, I have Summer Crush as my orange, and I'm just going to be loosely painting in. So I'm using a fair bit of water so that I get a little bit still of a translucent look. And I'm not looking at painting it, I don't want to paint it solid. I want to have it looking still just a little bit loose and having some of that background color just kind of still shining through a little bit. So I'm just looking at, again, kind of using the lines as a bit of a guide for me, and just getting kind of the shape and feel, a little bit of the outlining of that pumpkin happening more than anything else. So I will kind of use this as my guide, and I'll probably add in, you know, some other colors here. So I'm not looking at, you know, my pumpkins just kind of being flat one tone. You know, I'm looking at maybe, I'll add in a little bit of that cake batter yellow here and there, and just kind of get a little bit of the detailing happening with it. But I don't think that we need to have it solid to be able to then get the whole look and feel of the pumpkin itself. And I will probably use some black at the very end just to kind of bring back some of that shading, some of those details that mimic. And because I'm using my paint fairly thin, I can still see a lot of the lines from my stamp. So I'm still using them as my guideline, and I can still see them. And I might want to emphasize some of those at the end with some of my black paint. But you can see how quickly it kind of comes together. And the DIY paint is so good for this because it's such a heavily pigmented paint that even when I am diluting it down like I am, it still is holding so much color. Right? I'm not getting kind of this wishy-washy color at all. I've still got that heavy pigmentation, so you can still see all of the orange and all of the color that okay, so this would probably be easier if I just did this over on this side. All right, let me just see about a little bit of that cake batter, and that cake batter I think is going to be an awesome color to create, you know, a little bit of that highlighting. No pumpkin is like pure orange, you know. It's got some shadowing and some changes to some of its coloring, and that's really all that I'm after, is create a little bit of that variation in there, so we get some of the streaking. And I'll do the same thing for the other little pumpkin and for my leaves, my apple, adding in some of those details and then letting it dry fully before I then look at whether or not I want to add in maybe some black to highlight some of the vines or those kinds of things in there. So I am going to carry on. I will probably get out some of the DIY, the brown. I'm trying to think what that's called. I always, like chocolate cake, I always think of it as being like a chocolate cake look. And I think it's because of the cake batter, and it's just that version, right? But I will get some of that out to be able to help me with some of the stems and a little bit of the scroll work too. But you can kind of see how this comes together pretty darn fast. And I think I just want a tinge of that red that I'm going to be using on the apple, but just have it kind of highlighting down and echoing down in a couple of little spots here. And you could choose to do like all pale blue pumpkins, or, you know, like there's nothing that says that, or all your pumpkins are green, or they're all purple, or you have pink pumpkins, and, you know, what's the look and the color that works for you? Okay, so you see kind of where I'm going with this. So I'm going to carry on doing some of the painting, and I'll come back at you when it's fully dry for doing a little bit of the detailing together so that you can see where I'm going. So just get this painted out, letting it dry, coming back, and then we'll carry on together. Let me show you where we're at here. All right. So this is the painted version. Now, remember, because I've used the DIY paint, when we go to seal it, it'll actually darken it a little bit, right? But, you know, it's still kind of soft and a little bit neutral, and I want it to pop just a little bit more. So I am going to use a paint marker. So this is a water-soluble marker from Tombow. You could use whatever you've got. You could do this with paint as well, with a really fine brush and paint. But all I wanted to do was just kind of, let me take the skinny part to start. This is two-ended. So one end is a little bit like a paintbrush and one is a little bit more pointed. And all I wanted to do was just kind of use this to kind of follow some of those original lines from the stamp. So I'm just looking at, rather than it looking just totally like a painting, I want to add in a little bit of just some loose lines. Nothing exact, right? So I'm not looking to follow it perfectly. It's a little bit more like vague scribbling, scribbling with a purpose, if that makes sense. So let me just finish this pumpkin and I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so you can see the difference in that pumpkin, and see how the lines are just kind of loose. They're not exact. They're not following it perfectly. I'm not trying to trace anything. I'm just kind of, you know, creating just a little bit more interest in making it just, I guess, a little more dynamic or a little bit more fun, and really just a little bit more mine. Now, you could have just stopped at the painting. You didn't have to add anything else in. You could do this kind of outlining. You could follow it exact. You could take your stamps and stamp over it again, doing the masking again. So if you wanted to get all those black lines to show up just a little bit more, you could do that with it, right? To be able to kind of highlight just a little bit more with it. And that would work. So I'm just going to finish doing that. I'm going to use the black to add a little bit more shading to it. And again, just kind of going in very rough. I am going to spray shellac just the picture just lightly. Before then I seal everything. Like I'm going to seal the frame with just some clear DIY clear wax. And then I'll take some close-up pics and show you how it looks. But again, just, I'm not even worried if I'm staying within all the lines. It's not quite the point. So it's just more about highlighting it and having a little bit of fun with it rather than it having to be this exact paint by number. So you see with the apple, so you see how it just kind of accentuates it a little bit more, makes it pop a little bit more. So I'm going to carry on. I'm going to finish do my scribbling. I'm going to give just a really light, quick coat of shellac over the pictures. You could do any kind of a spray poly sealer. I just happen to have this. So just a clear sealer just to set that marker a little bit. And then I will clear wax the outside and take some pics to be able to show you. So this is a great way. I mean, obviously really fitting because, you know, today that I'm posting this is Canadian Thanksgiving. So really fitting with the harvest fruit and vegetables here. But you can do this same technique with any of the stamps. So whether it's some of the florals, you know, the big beautiful chrysanthemums or the peonies or the sunflowers, or some of the butterflies or the farm animals. I mean, whatever you want to do, you can do exactly the same technique and use it as a basis for creating a painting that you can hang on your walls, and it becomes your artwork because you've embellished it, you've added to it. Give it a try. I think it's a fun way of going. I think it's a great way even for kids to be able to create some, you know, some paintings for them that you're giving them in essence a really fun kind of coloring book on a frame, and then it becomes framed artwork for your home, for their walls, for their grandparents' walls. I mean, whatever it happens to be. I think it's a lot of fun. I hope you had some fun with it too. Give it a try. Let me know if you do. Love to hear from you. Until next time, take care.